gray color. She had white down the forehead, all the way down through her nose, and black and copper around her eyes, so she looked like she wore dark sunglasses. And so we brought her home, and that particular night, she was standing in a little patch of snow on our patio, and she looked like a little polar bear. Rusty, however, was a little sleeker in stature, and he was the color of what they call red merle. And when I first got him, he was kind of splotchy and kind of rusted color, and so that's when I got the idea to call him Rusty. His actual registered name was Solomon, but I called him Rusty because he looked more like rust color. So I would use those two dogs to breed and train and raise stock dogs to sell to the livestock industry in Montana and Wyoming and North Dakota, and that allowed me to continue to moving forward. One of my stories that's in the book that I love, actually there's a couple stories, but one of them that comes to mind happens to be what I call the dinner dance. So the first litter of puppies that Sheba had, she had 10 puppies. And so dinner feeding time got kind of comical because I would set 3 bowls on the ground and watch these puppies kind of pair off, and they would decide which bowl they were going to go to. And as the bowls kind of, as the food was depleting, they would move in on each other and kind of follow each other around in a circle, kind of in a pinwheel. So it was kind of really comical to watch them eating their food. But my other story that I love about the puppies and my Australian Shepherds was that for this particular first litter of puppies, they would play what's known as I would call the herding game, because that's their natural instinct is to herd each other by nipping at the heels, nipping at their heads, and turning them and everything. And so they would play the herding game. One would be the herder, the rest of the puppies would be the herd. And they would play this game all day long. One would get tired, he'd fall into the herd, and somebody else would become the herder, and they would play this all day long until they would end up totally, completely exhausted, and they would just fall into a great big dog pile.
That is a charming story, and I did really like the dinner dance too, because you could just envision them going from bowl to bowl, this continuing little dance back and forth, back and forth. It was actually quite charming the way you related that.
Yes, it was a lot of fun to watch them do that, and just to see how they would decide that, okay, there's more food over there, so now we're going to go over there and eat out of that particular bowl. But they would usually go around one way or another, either clockwise or counterclockwise, always just kind of dancing as they ate.
Yes. So it was during this time, I believe you were in Montana, where you really realized that your vision had taken quite a turn, and it was at that time you started using the cane. And I wanted you to bring out what it was that was happening with your vision, and I wanted you to tell people a little bit about what you were experiencing while you were trying to use the cane, which led you to embrace having a guide dog.
The reason for using the cane was the fact that my vision was depleting, being diminished, especially through the night blindness, and I realized that it was starting, it was happening, and it was getting depleted. And to go back a little bit to my Australian Shepherds, while I was I was in Montana, within a short period of time, at the end of having 3 litters of puppies out of my breeding stock, both of my my female and my male contracted 2 different types of cancer, and I had to put both of them down. But as I came out of that, and my eyesight was getting worse and worse and worse, I realized that I needed to finally pick up the tool with the cane. And the cane is an interesting tool to use for somebody who cannot see. Basically, you wave it across the surface, whether it's the sidewalk, whether it's the street, and it makes this noise. It goes tap, tap, tap. And first of all, I got tired of hearing the sound of the tap, tap, tap. But not most of all, I got tired of it getting stuck in places, because as you're walking across sidewalks, there's cracks, and the cane can get stuck in the crack. You can also get jammed up against a bumper of a car, or you can miss things with your cane depending upon how you use it. And if you miss things with this white cane, then your physical body finds them. And so I got tired of leaving my house to go someplace and coming home battered, bruised, and sometimes even bloody. It almost felt like I was walking out into a war zone. So in 1985, I met a lady. I was living in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and I met a lady who was using a working guide dog, and I was intrigued and curious, because I soon learned that she could get places quicker than I could. She got there less stressed, and she also got there with no blood on her or running into things. I'm like, going, wow, this is intriguing. Where did you get your dog? Who did you get it from? How did it become what it is? And so she informed me of the different schools. There was 2 of them. There was one in Michigan, and there was one in California. And so I would make application and be accepted to go, and decided that this would be a tool that I could use that would allow me to be able to get from point A to point B and to get there safely, and to not have to run into things, or to come home stressed and frustrated and banged up.
You know, I could actually envision this as I was reading it. And, I mean, because when you think about a sidewalk and all the different places that you were getting the cane stuck, I could actually, I could feel that frustration. And that sound, that would drive me nuts. So it was interesting to hear you talk about this cane, and then right after that, I mean, you actually begin to embrace that concept of going to the school and getting a guide dog. So I really appreciated that part of your book and you sharing that transition. But in the essence of time, Clark, we have quite a few subjects to go, and I want everybody to hear a little bit about what we're going to talk about in some of the other stories. So we're going to kind of move along. I do want you to tell us a little bit about Missy, and then Toddy, the double tall, hot Toddy.
I'd be very happy to do
Missy.
that. Okay. Missy was my first working guide. She was a golden retriever raised by a gentleman by the name of Bert Bordner. And Missy was a very laid-back golden retriever, loved life, loved people, loved food. Probably two of the stories that come to my mind immediately about Missy has to do with popcorn. And in the story, it basically talks about the fact that we're not talking about popcorn that's made out of microwave. We're talking about full deal on the stove, wrist action, dropped in the pan. But Missy would get excited when she would not only just hear it, smell it, But it's like going, come on now. When you put it all in the bowl, just make sure that some of it, okay, maybe even the whole entire bowl, could that just kind of like get on the floor, and I'll help you clean it up real quick. One of the other stories that's in the book about Missy has to do with Hershey's Kisses, because the aunt of the gentleman who raised Missy, she and I now have established a prayer ministry. We've been prayer partners for over 25 years, but we would go places, and one of the times that we were going somewhere, because we always get into deep conversation real quickly, she had her purse with a large bag of just barely opened Hershey's Kisses behind her front seat. Missy was in back, and we thought that Missy was back there sleeping and just, being a good girl. And when I got home, I got out. A little later, Betty called me, and she says, just want to let you know, heads up, that Missy was in the chocolates. And not only was she in the chocolates, but she decided that she didn't like the foil off of the Hershey's Kisses, so she unwrapped every single one that she had devoured. So there was this nice pile of foil next to her purse.
That's a trick.
Yeah.
How did she do that?
I would like to know. I mean, I'm sure that she probably held them with her paws and used her teeth to kind of. But even though for those of us, when you take your fingers and everything and you play with those crazy little wrapped Hershey's Kisses, sometimes can be fun. So I'm not sure how a dog did that. So.
That's a great story. Love the Hershey's Kisses story. Okay, now this is charming. This is also charming. The one about Toddy, the double tall hot Toddy. Go ahead.
Double tall hot Toddy. Well, just to give the listeners a visual imagery. Toddy was a big German Shepherd saddleback, 26 inches at his shoulder, and a very wonderful dog, and we had a lot of fun with each other. A good buddy of mine who he and I ran around together and did a lot of things with, we were headed towards a business meeting, had some time to spend, so we decided that we'd stop into the local Starbucks and get a cup of coffee. So we go in, we order our coffee, and we get our coffees, and we go over and sit down. And I barely get sit down at the table, and the barista comes over, and he says, "Sir, the dog has to go." And I'm like, well, excuse me? "Sir, the dog needs to leave the store." And so my buddy jumps up, and he says, "It's not a dog." And he goes to the restroom, and I'm like, going, great, Rick, thanks. So I stand up and go into educational mode, trying to educate this barista that my dog is a working guide dog, service dog. And I could tell real quickly that the gentleman was not getting what I was telling him. He was in my face. And so I said, okay, we'll leave your establishment. And my friend Rick and I, we left the establishment. We went outside, and as we left the building, Rick and I both kind of looked back in, and Rick could see the barista being interacted with by the manager of the store. And so we weren't exactly sure what the whole exchange was between the two of them, but Rick and I later contacted the corporate offices for Starbucks and received multiple coupons so that we could receive multiple cups of free coffee from our exchange in Starbucks, because that's not exactly how it's all supposed to happen. But things today have changed as far as working service guide dogs being accepted in Starbucks, and hopefully that whole inter-exchange back in about 1896 had an opportunity to help the corporation understand how to interact with people who are a little different in those types of situations.